The dining room smelled of onions and old potatoes, faintly metallic in a way that always made my tongue go dry. The wallpaper was still peeling, its hydrangea print dulled with the kind of stains that seemed to grow with memory. I sat between my older brother, Greg, and my cousin, Leslie, both of them square-shouldered, tracing their bread crusts with bored disapproval. Mum's roast chicken rested in the center, leaking pale juices onto the chipped platter. Dad carved with as much ceremony as our Sunday dinners ever allowed, but the air was already sour. The cousins' kids yelped at the telly in the lounge. I knew the routine. By the second glass of wine, someone would prod at my job or my lack of one, and tonight was no exception. So, Uncle Mark began, leaning forward with the open, false curiosity of a man itching for sport. What's the latest on the book thing, Jamie? Still scribbling away at coffee shops with the actors and the, what do you call them? Hipsters, isn't it? A fork paused midair. The rest of the table watched. Even Mum, always desperate to keep peace, quieted, her hands pressed into her napkin. I'm still writing, I said, keeping my eyes on my potatoes. Just finished the third draft, submitted to some agents last month. Leslie snorted. Agents, God, next stop Hollywood. The laughter was short and sharp, ricocheting between the table's cracked surfaces. I felt the flush up my neck, the heat settling behind my ears. Nothing wrong with writing, Jamie, Dad said, carving another slice with forced cheer, but you might look into something a bit more reliable on the side, eh? Like Greg's taken on at the print shop. His boss says there's room for more hands. Greg didn't look at me. He chewed, eyes locked on his plate. I noticed the roll of his shoulders, defensive but not unkind. We had fought as kids, but something in his quietness tonight felt like a warning not to make things worse. I have a few shifts at the bookshop, I replied, pays the rent. Uncle Mark leaned back, chair creaking, pays the rent for now. But writing novels, come on, how many people ever make it? You're clever, Jamie, but there's clever and then there's realistic. Mum interrupted, voice thin, he can always teach or work more at Waterstones. It's not what I want, I said, louder than I meant to. I want to publish, I will one way or, I bit down hard. St. Jamie off to save literature, Leslie said, wagging her fork for effect. Well, when you write your little book, make sure you put us in it. The laughter broke again, colder this time. I looked down, mashed my potatoes for want of anything else to do. All through the meal, whenever someone mentioned jobs or holidays or Greg's new second-hand Vauxhall, the conversation would swing, and each time it circled near me like a bird of prey. By apple pie I was barely tasting, only counting the minutes to escape. Later, in my old bedroom, I stared at the suitcase I'd never fully unpacked since uni. The room was too small, the decor too childish, the posters still half-ripped from adolescence. My nerves buzzed tight, voices drifted up from below, Mum talking about bills, Uncle Mark about sports, none of them mentioning novels. It was easier to remain a joke than a disappointment. I pressed my face into my pillow and told myself, as I always did, that I would finish the book. I would send it everywhere, and someday I'd give them something better than rumors to laugh at. Months bled into a year. I typed on trains, in the early dark of morning before Waterstones, in the corner table of a Starbucks off Leicester Square with lukewarm coffee and cold hands. I mapped arcs on napkins, jotted lines on receipts, and felt the story thicken beneath my fingers in fits and abortive starts. Submissions fed into silence or polite form letters. Each rejection strung less, then more, then had to be ignored altogether if I was to keep going. Family dinners thinned out after Greg moved up north for work. Mum prodded less, sometimes quietly slipping me 20s when she thought I looked peaky, her worry pressed between 10 words or less. The cousins stopped asking. Leslie drifted into marriage and baby photos. By the second year, only Dad still brought up the book, and then not kindly. You can't ride a dream forever, he said after one supper, voice low over the washing up. You're 32 now, son. I know how old I am, I said, though I didn't feel it. Still, I kept at it. The world outside my notebook seemed grey, indistinct. Crowded buses splashing through puddles, fluorescent lights at the shop, frost on the railings outside my council flat. Only when I turned back to the blinking cursor did life sharpen. I wrote as if to prove my own existence. I grew gaunter, quieter. I missed birthdays, saying I had deadlines. Truth was, the humiliation pooled inside me, bitter and metallic, and made everything else taste flat. Doubt clung to my chest, sometimes blooming so big I could scarcely eat, but there were mornings, rare but real, when I'd reread a chapter and feel a ghost of pride. The turning point was quiet. One February morning, grimy half-light on the street, I opened my inbox to another reply. This time not a form letter. Are you available for a call? We love your manuscript. I froze, staring at the words. My heart battered my chest. Was it a prank? My hands shook as I replied yes. That evening when the agent rang and her accent, crisp and Midlands, was real, undeniably real, I could barely stammer my excitement. There was talk of edits, of submissions, of patience again, but for the first time patience tasted like possibility. I signed the contract, I sent the revisions, I waited. Publication crept up slowly. My book would exist, slim and physical, spined and jacketed. I hugged that proof copy as if by holding it I could steady myself away from disbelief. I sat for author photos, feeling ridiculous yet tingling. The publisher sent me on a small tour, and at an event in Brighton, I signed my very first autograph for a teenager with shaking hands and purple hair. The reviews trickled in, nothing sensational but solid. The Guardian later called it an unflinching, gracefully observed debut. A minor award shortlist followed, foreign rights deals in places I'd never visited. Each note from a reader made up for every sour joke and each dinner silence back home. I read their words. How did you know? This book mattered to me until I wept alone in my rented flat, laughterless and light. My world widened. I shook hands with other writers I'd idolized. I learned to sign books and accept compliments. I moved into a warmer bedsit, splurged eventually on a velvet armchair and a desk that felt like mine. But I didn't call home more than I had to. I braced for the change in them, uncertain if success could undo what years of mockery had formed. 2 years passed from that first agent email. My second novel, not yet finished, dangled above my desk when a neat ivory invitation arrived from my cousin Leslie. "Greg's getting married," she wrote. "Would love to see you." At first I wanted to decline. Part of me still worried I'd slip back into the old role, the family's private embarrassment, the parlor joke, but it was time. Greg's wedding was in spring, bright and unexpectedly cold, the sky wavering blue like old glass. The church was small but crowded, filled with voices and the soft smell of lilies. I clutched my gift, a slim, wrapped parcel, and tried not to fidget as familiar faces filed past. "You made it," Greg said, clapping me on the back. He looked older, happier, paunched to his cheeks and a steadying warmth in his embrace. "Glad you're here, Jamie." "I wouldn't miss it," I said, and meant it. Leslie spotted me next, one manicured hand on her daughter's shoulder. "Look who it is, the famous author." Her words rang, half mocking still, but softer, tinged with curiosity she'd never shown before. I smiled, just me. Mum drifted over, fussed with my collar, pressed cool hands to my face. "You look well, Jamie," she said. "Eating, are you?" "Eating and writing," I promised, and she smiled, watery-eyed. The reception was at a hall not far from where we grew up, all string lights and tea sandwiches, relatives crammed into folding chairs. Toasts began, Greg's best mate, then Leslie with a slightly tipsy speech that made even Greg blush. When the tables cleared and the band paused to tune, Uncle Mark ambled over with his half-finished pint. His mouth was pursed, jaw working a familiar, skeptical rhythm. "Heard your book's out, didn't realize you'd actually done it, if I'm honest." Bitterness fluttered up, reflexive, but I tamped it down. "Yeah, it's in a few shops." "Did all right." Leslie said Sam at Waterstones put it in the window, he said after a pause. "Must be something then." "That's right," I said, gentle. I took a breath. "Would you like a copy?" I brought one. I slid the parcel from my pocket, the jacket peeking under the paper, my name, my real name, not Jamie from the family, printed clear and proud. Uncle Mark held it in his calloused hands, turning it over, reading the blurb. He opened it, flicked to the photo in the back. "Well, I'll be damned, that's you." The disbelief in his voice was less cruel, more like awe. "It's you." Something shifted in the space between us. He called Leslie and Greg over, and soon the whole knot of them were gathered. The book passed from palm to palm, eyes moving hungrily. Even the younger cousins, bored and hungover, glanced at the recognizably local street on the cover. "Is this really about us then?" Leslie teased. "You didn't make me a villain, did you?" "Would you even know if I did?" I replied, laughing. The knot of tension in my chest unwound a little. Mum, dabbing her eyes with a tissue, whispered, "I always knew you would, love." Dad leaned in, silent but proud, his hand squeezing my shoulder. For a moment I saw him as a man, not a scold or joke, but just someone who'd wanted certainty and feared I was gambling with my own happiness. As the night wore on, a queue formed, family, neighbors, old teachers. Each handed me a battered pen, each asked for a signature or a kind note or simply, "Is this really you?" Someone cranked up the band again, but people milled around me, enthusiastic rather than mocking, their earlier disbelief reshaped into incredulous pride. Even Uncle Mark, cheeks flushed from beer, winked and asked, "You'll sign one for my mate Dave? He never believed you'd do it." I signed, and for the first time I let myself enjoy the attention, not as reparations for the years they doubted, but as something earned, real. Doubt would always flicker at my heels, but I saw now that patience was not submission, it was faith, stubborn and quiet. Late as chairs were stacked and the room emptied, Greg found me sitting alone, still dazed by it all. "I never said it then, but I knew you'd stick it out," he admitted, gruff and awkward. "Took guts." I smiled, not needing more words. We walked home together, quiet but at ease, the streets of our old estate softened by moonlight. I lingered outside the house, hands in pockets. The garden gnomes were still crooked by the door, the air was sharp and sweet. My phone buzzed, another notification, this time from a teacher who'd read about the book in the local paper. "Proud of you, Jamie," I grinned, thumb trembling. I looked up at the windows. For years, rejection lived here, thick in the wallpaper and tablecloths, leaking from every small silence. Now, as I slipped the key in the lock, I felt the old fear slough away. It was patience that had carried me through, not theirs, not the world's, but mine, and it was enough. Tomorrow, I'd catch the train back to London to my pages and notebooks and deadlines. For tonight, I was home, successful, yes, but more than that, at peace, the ridicule buried in my bones finally transmuted into something softer, something like grace.